Hi, I'm Michael Veem. I'm the Executive Director of Joshua's Trust. I want to welcome you to Atwood Farm, which is our headquarters and a historic 19th century farm. We hope you enjoy this virtual tour.
Welcome to the Atwood Farm Museum in Mansfield, Connecticut. This is a property that belongs to Joshua's Trust. It was the home of Isabel Atwood and her twin sister. They grew up here. Isabel was an administrator at the University of Connecticut, and she was also an antique dealer. She saved the best. She kept the farm implements, the farm machines, she kept textile tools, and she kept lots of farm buildings. Corn crib, blacksmith shop, weaver's cottage. She collected them and placed them on her property, and so we have the benefit of her wisdom from all those years.
Our tour today will begin with the blacksmith shop, which once served the community of Wormwood Hill when it stood down by the road approximately where the entrance to our parking lot is now. The shop has a three-part plan. Immediately ahead of the entrance is the blacksmithing shop. Here, farm implements were made and repaired as needed. Samples of the types of implements forged lie on the tables to the right of the forge. Additionally, there is a carpentry bench with simple tools lying on it and hanging above. Here, repairs were made for items that were crafted for the farm and homestead. The third part of the shop is where the carriage and sleigh are displayed. This two-level barn was built in 1883. The horse stable and attack room and grain room were on the main floor, and hay in the loft. This is a New England bank barn. New England barns have the door in the gable end, and bank barns are built into a bank, giving entrance at the lower level. Most of the structure is original. The yard behind the barn leads to the lane with stone walls on either side. The cows will be brought to the lower barn level to be milked and then released to return to the night pasture. They were safer at night in the pasture close to the farmyard. They would be walked to other pastures during the day. The rail fences close off the barnyard from the other areas. This low structure built into the hillside was used for smoking hams, bacon, and other products as a means of preservation. The well sweep was used to raise buckets of water from the well, which is now buried. The heavy end had a weight, and the middle rests on a Y-shaped post, which functions as a fulcrum. The lighter end was lowered into the well. This ice house was moved to this site in the 1990s from a site about a mile away on Woodland Road. It has double walls to hold sawdust for insulation. Blocks of ice about 22 by 12 inches were cut in January or February from a neighboring pond, possibly Leander. The blocks were stacked here with sawdust between the layers and around the sides and top. The tools you see on the walls were used to cut and handle the ice.
This is the weaver's cottage. There are two rooms in here, one devoted to wool and one devoted to flax. So I think we'll start in the flax room. This is the flax room. And in here we have all the tools that you need to process flax. Flax is a plant that grows tall in the ground, and you pull it when it's ready and you let it dry. Then you soak it in water in order to dissolve the things that hold the plant together. And that makes a brittle stem. These stems are then broken on a flax brake. And the flax brake is this machine here. So handfuls of flax are held across the brake. The next step would be to whack them with a scutching knife. The next step is to use these bed of nails things. They're called hetchels. They're very sharp. And you start with a coarse one and you go finer and finer and you comb these strands through the bed of nails. The very coarse fibers are used for bags for potatoes and corn and such. The fine fibers are for clothing that you wear next to your body, like bloomers and chemises. Now let's go into the wool room. This is a wool wheel, a great wheel, also called a walking wheel because you walk a lot when you use this wheel. Sometimes in an old house there will be a place worn in the floor near a window where the walking wheel was. So this great big wheel makes this little pulley go very fast. And I spin off the tip. This is the kind of wheel I learned on. And after this piece of yarn is spun, I have to wind it back on. And then I spin again. This is a barn frame loom. It was in Izzy's barn for a long, long time. The warp yarns are wrapped around this back beam, and they go through the harnesses, which go up and down to allow me to weave. These are shuttles, and they have the weft yarn on them. The weft goes back and forth from right to left. The warp yarns are on the loom, under tension. So when I treadle with my feet, this shaft goes up. And I can pass the shuttle between the warp ends, and then I have to beam it in place.
I'm Mona Anderson, chair of the Atwood Committee. This orchard was maintained by Isabel and Harriet Atwood with heirloom apple varieties. There are sheepnose, russet, Baldwin, lady, gilliflower, varieties I don't know. It has about 20 trees. Many trees are quite old, but the sisters continued to plant. Isabel planted a peach tree the year she died when she was 93. I remember walking through the orchard in the fall with her while she told about the different varieties and what they were good for. Some were better for pies, some for applesauce, some for cider. We have a guide with pictures of the apples and information about the history and use of the different varieties. For instance, Gravenstein was developed in Denmark in the 17th century and is tart and is best used for desserts and sauces. Each tree has a number marker so you can connect the tree to the picture. You can get the guide from the trust office and walk around the orchard with it. There were too many apples for 1 or 2 people to eat, so Isabel allowed friends to come and pick them. However, this is not a public orchard, and the apples are maintained and used by the trust. Isabel did not have the trees pruned, so 3 years ago, we hired an expert to prune them for structure. It seemed extreme to some people, but it has resulted in healthier trees. Volunteers from the Atwood Committee have helped to do some of the subsequent maintenance pruning. The apples now, as you can see, are just finishing flowering, and it looks like we're going to have a good crop this year. Each fall, we have a public cider pressing on the farm, and we use apples from the orchard and a traditional apple press operated by a neighbor. In the barn, we have several apple pickers, like this one. They were used to reach up and pick the apples. There are also orchard ladders, which have a wide base and a narrow top. Current apple orchards prune their trees so they don't have to use ladders. Apples were an important crop on the farm because they're easy to grow, they don't require much maintenance, and best of all, they could be stored in the cellar in barrels for most of the winter. Cider was also stored in barrels in the cellar, and it would ferment and become alcoholic. This was not considered a bad thing. Martha, Isabel and Harriet's mother, was a good cook, and Isabel said that whenever they came home from school, there would be treats waiting for them. One assumes the treats were often apple-based.